Good morning. I'm Dr. William Fritz, the interim president here at the College of Staten Island. It's my pleasure and honor It's my pleasure and honor to welcome you to our beautiful campus. I especially want to thank all of our students, faculty, staff, CSI Foundation, alumni, friends, and other members of the college community, our CUNY trustees, and especially our Borough President, James Molinaro. As well as all of our local and state representatives for joining us today. And of course, it is an honor to welcome Governor Cuomo. In fact, I would like to thank the Governors Cuomo for recognizing the importance of the College of Staten Island in this, the fastest growing borough in the greatest city in the world. I say Governors Cuomo because in addition to the great support of Andrew Cuomo, it was Mario Cuomo who once praised our 204-acre campus as the most spacious and beautiful of the CUNY campuses. And who am I to argue with two governors, especially when they're right? Governor Cuomo has been a frequent visitor to Staten Island recently, and unfortunately it hasn't been under the best of circumstances. As we all know, Staten Island, where many of our students, staff, and families live, was heavily impacted by Superstorm Sandy. Under Governor Cuomo's leadership, all of us are working together to help Staten Island recover. To this end, the college is facilitating a Superstorm Sandy forum, a serious conversation about the future of Staten Island on March 8th. The College of Staten Island is uniquely suited to serve as a focal point where serious conversations take place and important ideas are exchanged. We are also home to the CUNY Interdisciplinary High Performance Computing Center that houses the latest generation of supercomputers funded in part by a state regional economic development grant under the governor's leadership. The modeling and mapping capabilities of our supercomputers is helping the college to lead the local, regional, and national discussions on strategies for land use and potential risk based on storm surges following the devastation of Superstorm Sandy. As we all know, education is the engine in growing an economy and improving communities, and the College of Staten Island and the City University of New York play a major role. The theme of the governor's budgetary agenda is New York Rising. We look forward to the continuing support of the governor and all our representatives to ensure that the College of Staten Island continues to rise with it. With that, I'm especially pleased to introduce another great leader with us today who has spent his career helping Staten Island to rise to new and great heights. Please welcome Borough President James Molinaro.
Thank you, President Fritz, and thank you for permitting me to give my state of the borough here for the last 8 years. I also want to acknowledge our council delegation that's here. It's a minority leader, James Otto, and Councilman Vincent Benizio. You know, 2 years ago, Andrew Cuomo was elected governor, and he decided to go around the state and tell the people what was wrong with government up in Albany. And he came to Staten Island. That was his first stop. And he went to Wagner College. And he went there and he explained to the people why we were doomed to failure. He explained to the people that they were playing with the budget. They would increase it 10% and then decrease it 5% and told the state, we just cut the budget by 5%. And that was going on. He said, no more gimmicks. And 2 years later, we see what he's done. He's balanced the budget, no tax increases. In fact, there's been a tax decrease for the middle class. And he's guaranteed, with his pension reform, that anyone working for the city or state will have a pension when he retires. And we thank you for that. Now, as I look out at the audience, there's many people out there that have gone through this devastation of Sandy. Many people. And it was a devastating event that took place. And we're coming back. We're coming back slowly. But we wouldn't be where we are today if it wasn't for Andrew Cuomo. I'll tell you why. He was on the phone the next morning and continuously for the next month talking to all the county leaders whose counties were devastated by the storm, asking them, what do you need? How do you need it? Is everything going all right? He sent the National Guard down there, 500 of them, just to go into neighborhoods and give food and clothing and making sure that people got whatever help they needed. And it went on and on. He reached out to Pepsi, he reached out to Walmart, he reached out to Home Depot to get supplies for us. And I know, as someone that was on the ground with my boots from day one, I knew what he was doing. And we wouldn't be here today, although we still have a long way to go. And I'm sure that he's going to take that journey with us as we go into the future to bring back Staten Island to its height that it was. So again, thank you, Mr. Governor. With that being said, I'd like to introduce not only a legislator from Staten Island, and I would like to thank all the legislators for what they did during Sandy. We were one team. We were not Democrats, we were not Republicans, we were not conservatives, we were not liberals. We were one team working for the people of Staten Island. And my office was made the headquarters for that team. We had 27 people from FEMA sleeping there on cots for a month. And every morning we would meet there before we went out on our assignments to our respective districts. And there was one gentleman that always bought the donuts and the bagels and so forth and so on to make sure we were fed. That was my very good friend and the person I'm going to introduce now, Michael Cusack.
Thank you, Mr. Borough President. Let's hear it for the Borough President. You know, the Borough President talks about Sandy, and I can attest to the fact I was there firsthand in Borough Hall. We are lucky on Staten Island to have a true leader in Jim Molinaro, and what he did and the leadership that he put out there, and he led the troops during the hurricane and after for the recovery and still does. I am proud to call myself a Staten Islander because of Jim Molinaro. I'd also like to acknowledge my colleagues in the Assembly. We have with us today Assemblyman Matthew Titone, Assemblyman Joe Borelli, and I don't see her, but Assemblywoman Nicole Meliotakis. Governor, on behalf of the constituents I represent in Albany, I'd like to welcome you to the 63rd Assembly District. Welcome to the neighborhood. Just watch yourself sitting next to Senator Lanza. Okay, be careful over there. To echo what the Borough President had said about Sandy, I want to talk a little bit about the governor and his leadership during that time and during these times. The devastation of Sandy happened in October, but continues to last even now at the end of February here in Staten Island. And from day one, Governor Cuomo has been there, and it's been reassuring to know that Staten Island has a friend in Governor Cuomo. And I can tell you that he was there. Not only did he show up on Staten Island many times with relief efforts, with help, but we knew as elected officials, the delegation knew that he was there. You know, there's being there and then being there. And being a Staten Islander, I'll put it in terms that we all know, the governor has our back. He was always there, and he always will be there. And Staten Island will get through this. We will recover. We will rebuild because of the efforts of Governor Cuomo. I also, as a legislator, want to just mention in the last 2 years, the accomplishments that this state has garnered because of Governor Cuomo. You know, in the last 2 years, the governor has restored New York's reputation in this country. We have gotten things done. It's been an ambitious list to go after, but this governor, with the help of the legislature, we have gotten many things done. We were able to, as the borough president mentioned, the governor restructured the tax rates so that middle-class families got a tax decrease in their income, the lowest rate in 58 years. He also enacted a comprehensive gun law this year. He also put in place, which is dear to our hearts here in Staten Island, a prescription drug program that will help with the abuse and fight the abuse of prescription drugs that run rampant here in Staten Island. And as a legislator, most importantly, he has passed, with the help of the legislature, on-time budgets that have put New York on a sound footing economically so we can move forward and have a bright future. And this session, I know, is going to be an ambitious session for all of us, and I know there's many things on that agenda. And one thing that I know that all of us are pushing for with the governor is an increase in the minimum wage. With other You know, New York has long served as a model for the rest of the world when it comes to fairness. And it's because of Governor Cuomo and the momentum that he has built, and the momentum that he has built as a team leader with the legislature in a bipartisan way, that I am excited about the future of this state. You should be excited about the future of this state. This is going to be, we're going to put New York State back on the map, and that's because of our governor, Governor Cuomo. I also have a duty today of introducing someone too, and I have the great honor of introducing a colleague, not only a colleague, but a friend, and somebody who we've worked together in a bipartisan manner to get things done for Staten Island, along with our governor. It's my pleasure to introduce to you my colleague, my friend, and your senator, Senator Andrew Lanza.
Good afternoon yet? Good morning. Good morning, Doctor. Ladies and gentlemen, Your Honor, the Governor. First, thank you, Assemblyman Cusack. Staten Island is so blessed and fortunate to have my good friend and colleague, Assemblyman Cusack, representing us in the New York State Assembly. We owe him a lot. So many of the good things that you hear about happening these days is because of the work and the leadership that we have from our Assemblyman, Mike Cusack. And the same goes true to my good friend and partner here on Staten Island in the New York State Senate, Senator Diane Savino. You know, it truly is a great honor. It really is great. It's wonderful to have Governor Cuomo here on Staten Island, here in CSI, the jewel of the CUNY system. He is and has become such a remarkable leader. You know, on the way in this morning, I told a friend, I hope I don't get in trouble as a Republican the way Governor Christie did when he talked good about the president. And the friend told me, well, that was different. He was talking about somebody running for president. And I said, I know, exactly. I know, exactly. You know, for the first time in a long time, New York State government is working toward a better future for New York. That's the truth. You need look no further, as my colleagues just mentioned, than the events surrounding the devastation brought to our shores by Superstorm Sandy. You know, they talked about his leadership, and it's so true. That leadership did not begin the moments after the storm. It began before the storm. When it approached our shores, the governor already mobilized resources, started targeting areas where help was needed and getting those resources there. During the storm, he was there making changes in order to make sure that people, as best as possible, could be made safe. And of course, in the moments after the storm, he was there with all of us here on Staten Island, elected officials, neighbors, friends, folks from around the country really came together in the wake of that storm. And really, at the lead was our great governor, Governor Cuomo. And I can tell you that I've watched him every day since. He and his administration, they've worked hard and continue to work hard to make sure that we bring federal and state resources together and deliver them directly to the people who have been hardest hit. And you're going to hear more about that in a few moments. But as Borough President Molinaro said, I don't know where we would be without Governor Cuomo's leadership on that issue. And that's just the latest of examples. You know, when I came to Albany a few short years ago, the notion of an on-time budget here in New York was something people had lost faith in. It was something that people thought would never happen again. And with the governor's leadership, that changed. 2 on-time budgets, filling multi-billion-dollar gaps, and the best part for me, doing it all with no new taxes. He did it, as Assemblyman Cusack said, and at the same time, reforming the tax code, lowering taxes for the first time in decades for millions of New Yorkers, to the point where millions of New Yorkers are paying less in state income tax than they have for almost 60 years. Quite an accomplishment. People said you couldn't do that. You couldn't fill those gaps. You couldn't pass an on-time budget. And you certainly could not do all of that and lower taxes, let alone keeping taxes and adding no new taxes or fees to that. Well, the governor said, nonsense. We can, and we will, and I watched him. He did. So he's batting 1,000. He's batting 1,000, 2 for 2. Our job, Senator Savino, my colleagues in the Assembly, our job, and I pledge, and I'm committed to working with this governor, our great governor, to ensure that we keep his batting average right there at 1,000. Governor, let me end by saying this. Thank you for your leadership. Leadership matters. Thank you, too, for proving that there is still virtue in putting differences aside, working together for the good of the people. I think that in working with this governor, that is his greatest strength. He has never let, in my experience with this governor, he has never let politics get in the way of doing what is right for the people. The state was hungry for that. The governor has put us back on track. I sure hope Washington is watching, because I believe they can learn a lot from our governor, Governor Cuomo. So with that, let me again say thank you, Governor. And it's my pleasure to introduce one of your own, a budding star, someone of my own ilk. I started my professional career as an accountant with Pete Marwick. She, too, just told me, she reminded me how old I am, because when I left college, I worked at one of the big 8 firms. She told me now it's the big 4. So it is my pleasure to introduce Katherine Brigandi.
Thank you, Senator Lanza. And on behalf of my fellow students, welcome Governor Cuomo to the College of Staten Island. It is an honor to have you here, and I thank you for inviting me to speak today. My name is Katherine Brigandi, and I am a senior majoring in accounting, finance, and economics. I also work at the CUNY High Performance Computing Center as a research assistant for the Social Policy Simulation Center. Currently, we are working on a project about an issue we are all familiar with from the past few months, Superstorm Sandy. The destruction and damage caused by the storm on Staten Island and in many places across the state was unprecedented and beyond our imagination. So the goal of our project is to help find ways to prevent what happened in the future. Using a geographic information systems program, I am using data provided by FEMA to build maps of the damage on Staten Island, so you can assess which areas were hit the hardest. Ultimately, this data can be used to decide how to rebuild or where to build back. I am proud that my research has the potential to make our community and state stronger, but our work would not be possible without the high-tech programs that we use. That is why Governor Cuomo's technology transfer proposal makes so much sense. It will achieve the commercialization of good ideas and the creation of new businesses, connecting academics, venture capitalists, business leaders, and other professionals and entrepreneurs to facilitate and grow the commercialization process and keep businesses in New York. He has proposed hotspots that will provide startups across the state with incubators that support the growth through tax-free zones. The governor wants entrepreneurs to create in New York, expand in New York, and stay in New York. I was born in Brooklyn, I go to school on Staten Island, and I want to stay in the state of New York because I know this is a place where young people like me and businesses can grow and thrive. Governor Cuomo's plan to invest in new ideas and businesses is an investment in New York's future. He knows that too many entrepreneurs develop new business ideas and products and then leave the state, bringing those ideas and products to other places, and that ultimately hurts New York. So I plan to stay here because I know our governor is willing to invest in my ideas and my future, and the future of New York. It is now my pleasure to introduce to you the governor of the great state of New York, Andrew Cuomo.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. First to Katherine Brigandi. Is she impressive or what? I think she's going to be an accountant the way Senator Alonzo was an accountant. I think she's going to accountant morphing into a politician, elected official. Let's give her another round of applause. Thank you very much, Katherine. Very impressive. It's a pleasure to be back on Staten Island. It's a pleasure to be back on this beautiful campus, and I will second what my father said, Mr. President, not that I would ever disagree with him anyway, especially in public. This is a jewel of the CUNY system. Pleasure. Thank you for having me today. To Interim President Fritz, he's doing a great job. He's a great leader. I'll tell you what a nice guy he is. He said any student who is here today gets 5 points extra credit for being here. Let's give him a round of applause. Isn't that something? To your borough president, who is, as you know, just a truly magnificent leader, and I've been an admirer of his for many, many years. He reminds me of something my grandfather used to say. My father's father, Andrea, who I was named for, used to say in Italian, and I would butcher the Italian if I did it, but he would talk about the test of a leader. And he would say, a leader is a person who thinks with his head but feels with his heart, meaning that you have to be smart, and you have to be thinking, and you have to be tactical. But you also have to feel, and it's about empathy, and it's about simpatico, and it's about relating. Your borough president is the icon of that statement. He's brilliant, and he thinks, but he feels, and he's simpatico. Borough President Molinaro, pleasure to be with you, sir. You are blessed to have a delegation that did everything that you've heard before. They came together around Storm Sandy, Hurricane Sandy. They did an amazing job working as a team, working together. Let's give them all a round of applause. Assemblyman Mike Cusack, who's the young rising star in Albany. Give him a round of applause. Pleasure to be with you, Mike. Your Senator Andrew Lanza, who is as sincere as he sounds and as committed to making government work as he sounds. He is from a different political party than I am. You can tell the way he dresses, his tie. He's a Republican. And it's a nice tie. It's just a Republican tie is all I'm saying. So we are from different political parties. But what we said, and the borough president said this about Hurricane Sandy. He said that basically with Hurricane Sandy, people put aside politics. What we said 2 years ago, because the state was in desperate shape 2 years ago, we said it's time to put aside politics. And we're not Democrats or Republicans. We are New Yorkers first, and we have to start to act that way. And we have to put the politics aside. And that was a commitment we made to each other. Now, it's easier said than done. You know, we're good at making promises one to another in relationships, right? They're just harder to keep. But we said we're going to put the politics aside. And we have done that for 2 years. And I can tell you personally, there's been a number of instances where issues are hard and the politics tends to rear its ugly head. And there have been a number of instances where I've reached out to the senator and I've asked him to sit down with me, and we've had a cup of coffee, and I've asked him personally this state needs help, I need your help, let's work on both sides of the aisle, putting aside the politics. And Senator Lanza has always risen to the occasion to do the right thing. And I truly respect him for it, and we all owe him a debt of gratitude. Now, let me tell you about today. The beginning of the year, the chief executive lays out a policy vision for that jurisdiction. The President of the United States will do a State of the Union address, where in the State of the Union, the President lays out the vision. And we heard President Obama a couple of weeks ago do the State of the Union. A governor does the State of the State address, where you lay out the vision for the state, you talk about the assets, you talk about the problems, and you lay out a course of conduct. That address is normally done to the legislative body. That's why the President does it to a joint session of Congress. It's televised. And the governor does it to the Assembly and the Senate in Albany, and that's what I did. But I came at this job in a little different way. I presented to the legislature, but I don't work for the legislature. I don't work for the politicians. I work for the people of this state. I work for you. That is my job, and that's how I see this relationship. So my point is, I want to make the presentation to you. I want you to hear the plan. I want to get your feedback. I want you to tell me what makes sense, what doesn't make sense. And then if you agree with what you hear, I'm going to ask you to get involved. Because it's a cliche, but it's true. Democracy works best when the people get involved. Your elected officials work best when they hear from you and they get your feedback. So I need you to be part of this process. And to the extent we've had a good 2 years, it's because you have been engaged in a way that the people haven't been engaged before. The theme of this presentation was New York Rising. And I think it's self-explanatory. Yes, we've had a number of issues. Yes, we have damage that is done. But the best days for this state lie ahead. We're all sure of it. Past few months, there's been a blizzard of events in the press, good news, bad news, some tragedies, some reasons for hope. So I think it's, to begin with, let's just get our bearings on where we were. As I said, we started 2 years ago. We said this state was at a crossroads, and that if it didn't change the trajectory, the future did not look good, and that we needed to make fundamental reform. We said we had to reverse decades of decline, and we had to organize a strike back, and New York State strikes back, a comeback plan for the state. And it was organized around several key principles. Good jobs, because that's why Katherine is here. She's looking for that job at the end of the day. It's all about a thriving economy. Otherwise, nothing else works. A world-class education system, which is why the jobs are here in the first place. A government of fiscal integrity and discipline, something the borough president is an icon for, and restoring New York as the progressive capital, because we're not just another state. We are a special state, and we're a state that people look to for guidance. I think it's fair to say after 2 years we've made progress. We're on our way. A great governor of New York, Al Smith, used to say, let's look at the record. Let's look at the proof. Well, gone is the obstructionist state bureaucratic culture. We changed the attitude. The government isn't there to stop things from happening. It's to be a facilitator. We called it entrepreneurial government 2 years ago. It does not have to be an oxymoron. You can have government that is entrepreneurial and is creative and energetic and trying to get to yes. You can end the political gridlock. It doesn't have to be politics for the sake of politics. You can appeal to the best in people and they can respond, and they did, and we have a government that's working for the people. So we made progress, but we have much more to do. The national economy is not where it needs to be, and therefore the state economy is not where it needs to be. Being the progressive capital is an ongoing pursuit. There's always more to do. Our children are not all being fully educated. We can do a better job as a society educating our children. And Mother Nature, as you know better than most on Staten Island, has not been kind to us. So the plan for the year. The 1-2 punch for New York, the top two priorities, it's always about jobs and it's always about education. That's our focus, because economic development is the engine that drives the train. We started 2 years ago the New York Open for Business efforts, saying it's a different day. Forget what you think about New York, high tax capital, anti-business state. No, it's a different day. And we called it New York Open for Business. And the first point was, you have to show business and show people that you're different and that you've changed. And New York State cannot be the tax capital of the nation. Businesses are more mobile, people are more mobile. If you just keep raising taxes, businesses and people will leave, period. And you're going to have to show them. And we did. 2 years, no new taxes, period. And we cut taxes to the lowest level in 60 years for the middle class, period. No new taxes, fiscal responsibility will bring more jobs because business will be here and they will invest with us. Number 2 is we have to pass the budget on time, because I don't know if you remember the bad old days where the state wouldn't pass a budget on time. April 1 is when the budget is supposed to be done. And it became a joke almost year after year. You would get to April and the budget would be late, and it would be 1 day late, and then 2 days late, and then 1 week, and then 1 month. And it was just a sign of the dysfunction. And people were disgusted with it. They would say, you know, everyone else has to do their job on time. Only government doesn't have to balance its budget. So it became a symbol of what was wrong with government. And getting the budget now done on time, the right way, honestly, is also a symbol of it working. We did it the first year, we did it the second year, we need to do it this year, which would be the third time that the budget is on time. Not since 1984, believe it or not, have we had 3 years in a row, and that's what we're going for this year to break that record. Where is our economic challenge as a state? It's right here in this area called tech transfer. When you look at the economies that are doing well and the economies that are doing better than us, it is where the economy is popping, is places where high-tech ideas are coming out of normally institutions of higher learning, and they're becoming commercialized. So it's the next cell phone, it's the next computer chip, it's the next circuit. And a school and a group of young, brilliant minds comes up with an idea and then it becomes a business. What's happening in New York is we have the institutions and we have the minds and we have the R&D dollars. We're coming up with the ideas, but they don't stay here to become a business. They go to California, they go to Texas, they go to Massachusetts to commercialize. Why? Because they still believe that we're the anti-business state. So we birth the ideas, but they then germinate somewhere else. We have to say to them, birth that idea here and stay here and grow with us. And that's just what the Innovation Hotspots idea is all about. It's a program that goes on top of our regional economic development councils, and it says this: we will provide an incubator for those new businesses, those new high-tech businesses, as a partnership between higher education and the private sector. And we'll provide an incubator that has all the support services. We'll give you the lawyers, we'll give you the accountants, we'll surround you with that. The state itself will invest in your business. And it will be a venture capital investment firm, the state of New York, investing in starting businesses. And it'll be a no-tax zone. So while that business is growing, there are no taxes. So there can't possibly be any state that has a better tax policy than our state because it's a zero-tax zone. We just ask one thing in return. You stay in New York, you grow in New York, you provide the jobs in New York, and you're an economic engine in New York. And that's worth the investment that we're making. Second, we have to have a ready workforce. Our work training program is from a different era, when we were in the manufacturing era. We have a generic job training program that just doesn't work anymore. We have to change the approach to a job linkage program, which flips the equation, flips the paradigm. First, identify the job and identify the employer and figure out what skills you need to fill that job and then train for that job. It's like a modern-day apprentice program. And we have an opportunity to do it because the jobs are actually coming back from overseas. Remember a few years ago, all the corporations said we're going overseas because labor is much cheaper. So we're going to Asia, etc., because we have cheap labor in Asia. You know what they found out when they got there? That they got what they paid for. You paid for cheap labor, you got cheap labor. And they don't have the skills, and now they're coming back. And that's an opportunity for us. We have roughly 210,000 unfilled jobs in New York today. People who don't have the training to fill those jobs. And that's our opportunity. We're going to propose the next generation New York Job Linkage Program, change the way our community colleges, our job training programs work to actually train people for the job that exists, and let's get people in those jobs. Once a person has a job, we have to make sure the wage that is paid is enough to allow that person to live and to eat. The state has a minimum wage law. Right now, if you work full-time at a minimum wage job, you make $14,600 per year. The question is, can you live on that? Well, the average cost of gasoline is $1,200. Electricity is $1,300. Insurance, $1,400. Groceries, $6,500. Child care, $10,750. Annual cost of housing is $15,000. You cannot live on the current minimum wage. It just doesn't add up. We're outpaced by the other states in our region. We propose raising the minimum wage to $8.75 an hour. It's the right thing to do. It's the fair thing to do, and it is long overdue. We should do it this year. When it comes to education, our other priority, 2 words: we have to do more and we have to do better. Literally more. Forget this state for a second. This nation is losing to other nations when it comes to education. And our children today are not just going to be competing against other students in the state or other students even in the country. It's going to be an international competition. And they just educate their children more. They spend more time in the classroom. Our calendar, our school calendar, is the reason we have off in the summers is because we organized the calendar when we were an agrarian society. And the children had to have off in the summer because they had to tend the fields. That's where we are. We have to think about literally changing the way we educate to educate our children more with more learning time. Now, how do you have more learning time? Well, there are 3 options. You can extend the school day, or you can extend the school year, less vacation, less of a summer vacation, or you could do a combination of both. This is, I believe, the direction we have to head. I believe it is a major shift, but I think it's one that we have to start. I think it is difficult in practice because it gets practical and it gets complicated. Longer school day, longer than 9 to 3. Now, who's going to watch the kids? You change work schedules. Longer year, you interfere with summer vacations, etc. So it's complicated. What we want to say is this. There are 700 school districts in the state. We will leave it to the individual school districts to make this determination. You can have more time, longer day, longer year, combination of both, or a school district could say, I'm not interested. I want to encourage the school districts to do it. I believe this is the right way to move if we are truly serious about giving our children the best education on the globe, but we'll leave it to the local school districts. As an incentive to encourage them to do it, however, the state will pay 100% of any additional cost of any additional time. It's also true for more early education. All the numbers say clearly the sooner you get that child into the classroom, the better that child will do academically in life, etc. Pre-K should be a necessity for all our children, full-day pre-K, and that's something we should move to as a society, and we want to start that move this year. Schools in poorer communities, for many years we've been going back and forth and we've been comparing schools in poor communities to schools in rich communities. And that's been the conversation. What kind of job is a school doing in a poor community versus a school in a rich community? My point is there's no comparison between a school in a poor community and a school in a rich community because the school in the poor community is doing a totally different job. It's education plus. It's school plus. Many of the students don't have a 2-parent family. They don't have the supports. They don't have the wraparound services that families are giving their kids. Let's recognize the difference. Let's recognize that that school in the poorer community is trying to do something different. Let's give the school those support services, those social services. Let's pay for the mentoring. Let's pay for the after-school training. Let's pay for the homework assistance and really give those children the start in life they deserve. And let's invest in the children early rather than paying for a problem later on. Let's call them community schools and provide the help we need. Let's also invest in the higher education system. We've been investing in the SUNY system, which is a jewel all across upstate New York primarily, a quality higher education system. as is the CUNY system. Let's invest in higher education because we get our dividends back tenfold. While education and economic opportunity are the engine that drives the train, there's also more to New York. And New York is really the equality capital of the nation. That's the way I like to think of it. We're different than most places. You look around this room, we come from different places, we celebrate our diversity, and we were in many ways unique as that example in democracy, where we invited people from all across the globe, and we said, you come here, and we will make one community from all of us. And we had one rule: we're all equal. We're all equal. We don't judge on the basis of color of skin, or religion, or ethnicity. I'm Italian, you're Irish, you're Jewish, you're African American, whatever. We're all one, and we are equal. That was a New York franchise, and it still is. And it's something we have to work on. We passed marriage equality in the state of New York. And we took a long-standing, static case of discrimination, which is all it was. It was discrimination based on sexual orientation. And we said, not in New York. And I learned something. We passed marriage equality. We made a difference for millions of people in New York. You know what else we did? We posed an example all across the nation. And people looked to New York, and they said, wow, did you see what they did on marriage equality? Maybe we should do it. Let's examine ourselves. That's the power to New York. And this being equal, this equal society is a work in progress and something you have to constantly reevaluate to find injustices and injustices that we need to strike down as a society. And I believe there are even more injustices that are there today, that are in this room today, if we want to really be honest about who we are and how we treat one another. And that's what we should look to today.
These two babies were born in the same hospital on the same day at the same time. They will both go home to loving families and good homes. They will attend good schools, get the same grades, and earn the same degree. They will enter the same profession, but their lives will be much different. One will earn, on average, $11,000 less per year and $500,000 less over a lifetime. The other is 32 times more likely to become a CEO or serve on a corporate board. One is 5 times more likely to be sexually harassed or become a victim of domestic violence, and more than twice as likely to be a victim of housing or lending discrimination. One is twice as likely to become a single parent living in poverty, and twice as likely to live out old age in poverty. Why? Because one is a girl. It's not right. It's not fair. It's time for a Women's Equality Act.
That's right. The truth is, if we want to be truly honest, that we still discriminate against women in society today. That is the truth. That is the truth. It is not a pleasant one. The discrimination can be subtle, but it is insidious, and that is the truth. Let's recognize it, because you can never solve a problem that you refuse to recognize. Let's recognize it. Let's solve it. Let's solve it in the state of New York. Let's set an example for the rest of the country. Let's pass a Women's Equality Act this year. We have a 10-point agenda: shatter the glass ceiling. A woman still makes 77 cents to a man's dollar. Zero tolerance for sexual harassment. Strengthen employment and credit discrimination laws, human trafficking laws, end family status discrimination, end discrimination in housing. discrimination of victims of domestic violence, pregnancy discrimination, protect victims of domestic violence by strengthening order of protection laws, and protect a woman's right to choose. That is a women's equality agenda. Second societal issue that we have to deal with, and we did, and we made great progress in the state, is the issue of gun violence. Now, there's been a current horrendous scourge of gun violence, the Newtown, Connecticut, which is almost unimaginable, Webster, New York, outside of Rochester, where a person set fire to a car. Firefighters came Christmas Eve night to put out the fire that the person set. He was in his house with an assault rifle and shot the firefighters when they came to put out the fire. But this is not just the past few weeks. This has been years and years, this has been decades, where society has been unable to come to terms with gun violence. And they've been unable to come up with common sense, reasonable laws to allow people who want to have guns and are fit to have guns, but to protect the rest of society. We came up with a law in the state of New York that is reasonable, that is balanced, that is measured, that respects hunters and sportsmen, but it ends the unnecessary risk of the high-capacity assault rifles, which are just designed to kill. It keeps guns from the criminals and mentally ill. It bans assault weapons. It closes the private sale loophole, tougher penalties for illegal gun use, handguns, and the Webster provision, which is a mandatory life sentence for a person who kills a first responder. It was we passed this bill on the second day of the legislative session, and we passed it quickly because we wanted to get it done. And let me say this about your elected officials. We're very good at pointing fingers, especially at government and politicians, when things don't happen and things don't happen well. This was one of the great acts of progress and great political acts of courage that I have seen. This was a very hard bill to pass because we can say, well, it's common sense. Yes, it's common sense. But there are lobbying groups on the other side. The NRA is a very powerful lobbying group. People have very strong feelings about the Second Amendment and about their right to have guns, and some people believe government has no role whatsoever in regulating guns. And these elected officials showed true courage to do the right thing, but sometimes it's hard to do the right thing. And they did the right thing, and they acted in the best interest of the people of this state, even though it was politically difficult. I want them to stand. I want to give them a round of applause, and I want to tell them how much I admire them. Stand up, and how much I admire them for what they did. Let's give them a round of applause and say thank you. On top, last but not least, on top of all of the above, we have a little curveball sent to us by Mother Nature. Hurricane Sandy, October 29th. Hard to imagine that it was that long ago already. But let's begin by learning from what has happened. And the lesson that I draw from what has happened is that the fact is that climate change is real. I do not believe that this was another episode, isolated episode that will never happen again. We have 100-year storms every 3 years. It is inarguable, but that the sea is warmer and that there is a changing weather pattern, and the time to act is now. We want to make government work and work better than ever before, but we don't want to just rebuild. We want to rebuild smarter than before. And that's part of it is, if we're going to build a home that is in a potentially, an area where they could potentially get hit by a storm, I would rather spend more money, invest in that home, build it right with the right mitigation measures than rebuilding that home every 3 years. We have the technology. We know the type of architecture we need. Let's build back smarter than before, and let's do it right. Let's also recognize that there are some places that Mother Nature owns. Now, she may only come to visit every 2 years or 3 years or 4 years, but when she comes to visit, she reclaims the site because she owns the site. And I can tell you there are a number of people who I've met who said, you know what, this has been the 3rd time, the 4th time, the 5th time that I've had to rebuild this home. Every time there's an aberrant weather pattern, there's damage to the house. I want to be there for people and communities who want to say, I want to give this parcel back to Mother Nature. And I think that is an option we should make available to people and to communities if they want government to buy out their home and we leave the parcel vacant and they move to higher ground, a different parcel, we should make that an option that they could take advantage of. The Oakwood Beach section of Staten Island is just one of those communities. It's been damaged time and time again. It is in a situation that is very vulnerable. What we want to say to the Oakwood Beach residents today, 141 homeowners who have come together, who are asking for a buyout, the communities would repurpose the land for recreational use, that the state will pay 100% of the pre-storm value of those homes that were damaged. The state will pay 100% of the pre-storm value of the homes, an additional 5% if the new home or the new residence is on Staten Island, because we'd like them to stay on Staten Island. And that's an offer that we're going to be making today, literally taking applications for Oakwood Beach, and I want to make this available for other communities across the state. We must also learn and harden our infrastructure. It can't be every time there's a storm that the subway system gets flooded or the infrastructure gets flooded. Our airports can't close. We have work to do in redesign of our airports so they don't flood. Our fuel delivery system, if you remember the chaos around fuel, the waiting lines, that was all caused by a day-and-a-half delay in the fuel delivery system. We have no reserve. There is no backup. If there's any break in the supply, that's what happens. We have to change that system this year. We have to harden our utilities. It can't be every time there's a storm, the wind blows, a tree falls, and a wire's down, and everybody's in the dark. We have to redesign our power system. We have to have the best emergency response network on the globe. And we want to fund communities to come up with their own plans for restoration and reconstruction, because communities know best what their needs are. So we're going to make community grants to communities that were damaged all across the state. The good news is we got $30 billion in Sandy aid from the U.S. Congress. $30 billion is a lot of money. We can do a lot of good work with that. I want to thank the Congress, the House and the Senate, and President Obama for signing that law and getting us the $30 billion, because that is really good news. But the best news is that we are New Yorkers. And my last point is there was a silver lining to this storm. I believe that. And you heard it from your elected officials today, that New York is united in a way that it's never been united before. You know, this state community is a little bit like a family. And sometimes when you're a family, you know, you have issues and you fight with each other and you have little distance and little tension, and then something real happens in your life. God forbid somebody gets sick, God forbid somebody dies, and that family comes together and all the little stuff disappears. This storm did that for this state. We have little differences, little geographic differences, but that storm hit, and New Yorkers were in trouble, and New Yorkers came out of the woodwork to be there one for the other. And such a spirit of citizenship and community and caring and voluntarism and people showing up on the street with baked goods and people showing up just to volunteer. They didn't know anyone. They didn't even come from around here, but they said, you know what? I'm a New Yorker. And another New Yorker is in trouble, and I'm there for my New Yorker. And it was so beautiful to see so many people there who just wanted to help. They didn't want money. There was nothing going on except they wanted to be there to help one another. And that is us at our best. And that is our essence. And that is our strength. And if we can hold on to that and remember that what unites us is more powerful and more important than what divides us, and forget the differences, they're meaningless. Forget the color of skin. Forget where you're from. We are all New Yorkers. We are one. We are united. And we are together the greatest state on this planet. And if we remember who we are and how strong we are together, there is no state that can match us. And New York is going to rise this year to be the best state it has ever been. And we're going to do it together. Thank you and God bless you.